what did you expect to happen? I mean, the refs clearly wanted Victor Wembanyama to continue to drive that face of the league conversation. And no doubt, Victor Wembanyama, he was dominant in this game. But the reason that the Celtics lost this game had nothing to do with Victor Wembanyama. The Celtics had him under control. It was the fact that they just decided to eject Jaylen Brown in the first quarter, or actually second quarter, 3 minutes left until the half. You just decide to eject the best player on the court, the player that was dominating this entire season, that is in the MVP conversation. And yes, Jayson Tatum is out there, but we know Jayson Tatum is on a minutes restriction. And Jayson Tatum looked good when he was out there. In fact, he had the best plus-minus differential really on the team besides some of the bench guys. He had the best plus-minus for the Celtics starters, at least, with a -1, yet he's only playing 24 minutes a night. There is no way that the Celtics offense was going to be able to survive without Jaylen Brown on the court. And that's exactly what happened tonight. So with that being said, what's up everyone? Welcome into your Celtics source, home of your now 43-22, still second place Boston Celtics, but they do lose a game on the Detroit Pistons with the Pistons win tonight. And they fall 125-116 to the San Antonio Spurs. To be honest, the story of the night was Bam Adebayo dropping 83 points against the Washington Wizards, 31 in the first quarter, 30 of, 34 or 39, something like that from the free throw line. I mean, just a ridiculous breaking, or I guess not breaking the record, but moving into second place ahead of Kobe all time for most points in a game. That's the story of the night in the NBA, because, who cares about this random game on a Tuesday? That being said, you have two, MVP candidates in Victor Wembanyama and Jaylen Brown going at it, and the refs, just put it into their hands to call the game. And yes, one tech, definitely deserving for Jaylen Brown, arguing, a push in the back by Castle for sure. Definitely a foul that was not called. Definitely deserving still of a tech for Jaylen Brown. But the two techs, I mean, what are we doing here? You're not the face of the NBA. The refs are not the face of the NBA. In fact, you get paid, a little salary of whatever in the hundreds of thousands, whatever the NBA salary is, maybe less than that, for a reason. You don't get paid $50 million a year because you're not a $50 million a year player. You're not. You're the official. And it was just sad to see the refs just put the game and, in their fate. I mean, the Celtics had no chance to win this game with the minutes restriction that Jayson Tatum was on. And we'll talk about Jayson Tatum and the performance that he displayed when he was on the court in just a second. But to wrap up this sort of opening segment here, there was no way the Celtics were going to win this game. In fact, I give them a lot of credit for keeping it close before the Spurs were able to pull away in the fourth quarter when Jayson Tatum wasn't on the court. And Joe Mazzulla did his best to sort of stagger Jayson Tatum's minutes. He didn't play them all at once because he was trying to find a way to have Jayson Tatum on the court when the game, when the game was closing in the fourth quarter. But you have a lineup out there with Derrick White, Baylor Scheierman, Neemias Queta, Ugo Gonzalez, Ron Harper Jr. Like, no disrespect to any of those guys. In fact, I thought Baylor Scheierman was fantastic tonight in the minutes that he played, just being a ball handler besides Derrick White, just being that, extra guy on the floor, especially because Peyton Pritchard was out tonight with neck spasms or whatever he was dealing with. This is a game that you really could have used a Peyton Pritchard just for the scoring, just because of when Jaylen Brown went down. But that being said, I can't get, the league, the story around the league is probably going to be, oh yeah, the Spurs are a dominant Western conference opponent. They're a dominant team, ready to be one of the first teams to go from not even being in the playoffs to being a Eastern Conference or NBA champion. That's going to be the story in the NBA. But to be honest, there's nothing you can take away from this game, given the lineups that the Celtics put out there versus what the Spurs had out there. Right? I mean, Wemby, right? I know Wemby doesn't play, a ton of minutes, given that, he can be, they want to keep him healthy and whatever, especially for the playoffs. He still was at 37 minutes as their star player compared to 24 from Jayson Tatum. I mean, that's the difference in the game. Jayson Tatum in this game, 10 of 24. He looked better down the stretch. I thought early in the game, he was, he was coming around these screens and he was shooting that, pull-up three that he usually takes. But he looked very much like a LaMelo Ball. It seems like he was falling forward. He wasn't able to rise up. And, that might have been because of the Achilles. And in fact, that might be actually, he just doesn't have the strength in that Achilles quite yet, in that leg, to come straight up instead of falling forward. Later in the game, we saw some much better shooting, right? Jayson Tatum, he's a streaky three-point shooter at best. But that being said, he has a much better chance of making them when he's going straight up instead of falling forward. And you could just tell early in the game he just didn't have it going. He was falling forward on his three-point shooting instead of going straight up. And that resulted in some bad misses. Down the stretch, he did a good job of going straight up, and his threes were starting to fall. He banked one in. Lucky, but, still, we very much needed that three at the time. He also looked good getting to the rack, driving sort of side steps and ones. He looked pretty good, moving, driving to the basket. That was good to see. And the defense, he held up on Stephon Castle, on, Fox when he was sort of placed on him. De'Aaron Fox, wasn't able to really get by him, even though they tried to attack Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum did a great job defensively in this game, moving his feet. He looks very good. Besides that three-point shot, which is going to come with time, with reps, when he gets even more strength in that Achilles, that's going to start to fall. But other than that, Jayson Tatum looked good in this game. As for other players, Derrick White looks just so much better with the addition of Jayson Tatum. His shot is coming back. Derrick White, he was a minus 13 in this game, if I'm not mistaken. Minus 14, but 11 of 22. The three-point shooting still not quite there, but he did a great job in this game of sort of fooling Victor Wembanyama. He would sort of get Wembanyama stuck in the middle, and Derrick White was able to hit these floaters over the top because Wemby was deciding on whether to come, defend White on a drive or stay on Keita, because, White had that ability to throw it up the second Wemby decided to come over. And, I guess that was lucky for Derrick White, because I do think if Wemby decided to come over, he could still block the lob attempt, because just White wouldn't be able to get it up in time and over. But that being said, right, Keita, 19 minutes, 5 points, only 4 rebounds. He wasn't, a big factor in this game, largely because the Celtics, used Keita as a way to get Wemby away from the basket, right? And obviously, they'd rather play 4-on-4 without Wemby, because, no disrespect to Keita, but, a Keita for, Wemby sort of swap there is just fine for the Celtics. They'd rather play 4-on-4. So they sort of put Keita on the perimeter and started running ball screens with Keita, which forced Wemby to come out onto the perimeter. And that allowed, the Celtics to get some good looks in the paint and then open it up. They did make some tough threes as well. But, the story of the game is the fact that, you just didn't have Jayson Tatum out there long enough to make a difference. And that's, understandable. It's not like Joe Mazzulla, made some bad coaching decision or anything like that. You weren't allowed to play Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum's not going to play 40 minutes a night like Wemby did in this game. So there's just no way that the Celtics were going to win this game with the lineup that they put out there. That being said, I did think that, Victor Wembanyama, when he's making, 8 threes in this game, he is virtually unbeatable. And I know, the percentage might not be great for Victor Wembanyama right now. And I know SGA, he's on I think probably tonight or tomorrow, whenever they play next, SGA is going to break Wilt Chamberlain's record for consecutive games with 20 points. But Wembanyama is the best player in the NBA right now. And Jokic is still doing what he's doing, but the ability to play like a point guard at 7'5", and he's only going to get better. What is he shooting this game? 8 of 15 from 3, and 15 threes is way too many to be taken. But when you're making over 50% of them, nobody's going to stop you. The Celtics did, play a little bit of a role in that. They let him shoot some of the threes late in the game, sort of daring him to shoot, and actually that's really what caused the Spurs to go on the run to close the game that they did. The Celtics sort of dared Wemby to shoot, and he was just knocking them down. Wemby, to be honest, I thought the Celtics did a good job of keeping him out of the paint. He wasn't dominant, around the rim or anything on either end. So the Celtics did, the best job they could on Wemby. He got us 39 points on, 11 of 20 shooting. But, the Celtics were going to win this game with Jaylen Brown because Jaylen Brown was cooking in the first quarter and second quarter, really, until he went out, right? I mean, plays 15 minutes, 8 points, but he has the 7 assists. I mean, he was diming everyone up. He has 2 rebounds, 0 turnovers to that point. He was just spectacular in the game so far, right? Until, he goes down, or until, they eject him, right? I thought Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, were going to carry the Celtics to a win that night, despite what Wemby was doing. And I truly believe the Celtics would have won that game. So, as we look here, the Celtics, they have a tough game on Thursday against the Thunder, and you could, unfortunately lose that game because the Thunder are a good team as well. And, I know you get the win that you need against the Cavs just in terms of Eastern Conference standings, but it was looking like the Celtics were going to be able to come away at least 2-1 on this road trip, and now they might be 1-2, at least after the Thunder game. They might have one more game on the road trip here as we look. They do play on the road. They come home against the Washington Wizards, Suns, Warriors, Grizzlies. So that should be a stretch where you can get some of these wins back. But the Celtics have a tough schedule to end the season. The Cavs have an easy schedule. Detroit has an easy schedule. I think you're going to end second in the East. You're sort of looking for, at this point, for the Charlotte Hornets to move up so that if they win a play-in game, they're playing the Pistons in round 1 and not the Celtics. Although the Celtics should beat them, but I wouldn't want to face the Charlotte Hornets in round 1. But we're going to wrap it up here. Once again, the Celtics fall to the San Antonio Spurs without Jaylen Brown for the better half of the game. They lose 125 to 116. Jayson Tatum just didn't play enough to make a difference, or I guess to carry the Celtics to a win. There was just no way with the minutes load that Jayson Tatum was on. And, I give a lot of credit to Derrick, White, Baylor, Scheierman for keeping this game as close as they did until that fourth quarter when Jayson Tatum wasn't out there until the final, 4 minutes, and the Celtics just couldn't keep the lead close enough for when Jayson Tatum came back in. So, once again, the Celtics fall to the Spurs. They drop a game now, and they are now 43-22, still in second place to the game, but an unfortunate loss and just a bad look for the NBA, ejecting Jaylen Brown. But, follow on social media. We will be back. Probably not with any coverage over the weekend in terms of, we're going to do a podcast episode tomorrow, but then I'm actually going to take the weekend off. I'm going down to Miami to watch the World Baseball Classic. Last time I checked, the U.S. was losing pretty big to Italy. We'll see, if they can come away with the win. Otherwise, it's going to come down to Italy versus Mexico tomorrow, as the U.S. doesn't have another game. But I'm going to watch the World Baseball Classic, nevertheless, in Miami, so we're not going to have any podcast episodes or instant reactions, highlights and stuff will still be out there. But because of that, we're going to do a podcast episode tomorrow afternoon sometime. It won't be live, but it'll come out tomorrow afternoon at some point. And we'll talk about Jayson Tatum's, first couple of games here. We'll talk a little bit about this game and Jaylen Brown's injection and all that. But more importantly, we'll look ahead to the stretch that the Celtics have to end the regular season. And we probably won't quite get to a full playoff preview, but we'll start to, talk about what this team can do, what this team can accomplish in the NBA playoffs. But with that being said, stay tuned for that tomorrow. And until next time, go Seas.